In this demo, we're going to show you how you can use Turbot Guardrail's stack native capabilities to deploy cloud landing zone concepts. So within Guardrails, we already had a concept of stacks that use Terraform behind the scenes. This new feature now leverages OpenTofu with some more flexible capabilities. And so these capabilities are within your policies. So if I just was to look up stack native, I'll see a collection of policies for Amazon, Azure, and GCP. So the collection of policies here will be at the account level, a region level. Maybe you have specific service stacks for IAM, for networking, etc. And those scopes, within those scopes, you can define your source code for your OpenTofu HCL. You can define your variables, like your TFRs. There's secret variables, and there's some other capabilities that we've added. For the simplicity of this demo, we're just going to pull a policy pack from the Guardrails Hub, and we're going to show how you can deploy an AWS IAM role across a multi-account model. Putting these stack policies together, I'm going to use the AWS IAM stack native controls, which are specific for IAM resources that I'm going to deploy. Here I have my source policy, and that source policy is defined. So this is just OpenTofu HCL out of the box. You can apply this right into the policy setting configuration. And for this particular example, I'm creating an IAM role named ops read only role, or named here. And the trusted principles I'm going to use as a variable to show off the variable policy. Here I'm going to bring in a trust based off of the current account, which I'll show. And then also this role is getting attached to a AWS IAM managed policy called the read-only access policy. So pretty simple, but just to show the capability, this is a OpenTofu HCL. The other policy setting I have is a variables setting. Here I could simply put in static variables or maybe a map or a list of variables, but to show off the power of Guardrails, I can use a calculated policy to look up information from the Guardrails CMDB and dynamically apply that into the variables. And so in this use case, I want to assign the ARN of the account that the OpenTofu stack will be applied to. And what I can do is during the deployment, Guardrails can look up the account ID that it's being applied to and then add that in to the IAM policy. And so calculated policies are a mix of a GraphQL query, which provides the data to then be formed into the template. So here I'm just going to look up the account ID. I'm then going to use a nunchucks template to just define that variable into the policy setting. Here my variable was called trusted principles, and I'm just going to fill in the ARN using the account ID of the applicable account. So this policy is already set as part of the policy pack, plus the source, and it's in check mode. And so I have this assigned to my Acme organization here. It's doing a plan where I can see, okay, these variables are now being calculated. So I have 3 Amazon accounts, my shared services, this demo sandbox, and this Houston account. That variable is being calculated. So that policy value is already filled. That ARN that's going to be applied to the IAM policy will be this 930 account, this 502 account, this 730 account. Each of those are now part of the plan, and I can see that the source would be applied as well. Because it's in check mode, I can then see that for each one of these accounts, the resources need to be created. So right now it's in alarm because each of these accounts don't have that IAM role or the policy attachment set. So to change that, I can move out of plan and apply the stack by changing this from check configured to then enforce configured. And so now that's going to deploy the stack across the environments. Here in my Amazon account, I do not have that ops role. What's happening now is that Guardrails is now creating the container, spinning that up. It's going to execute the OpenTofu deployment, and then it's going to apply that to each of my accounts. And so we'll just do a refresh here, and we'll take the demo sandbox environment as an example. This is our now handling that deployment. We can tail that log file of that deployment. So right now the container is launching. It will then spew out the OpenTofu deployment plan and all the execution details in the output if I define outputs in my source. So here refreshed, and now I have my deployment. Everything looks like it had went successfully. So it added the 2. So the role and the policy attachment, they're considered 2 different resources. And now that's set across the environment. So if I just go back here, looks like it went across all 3 of those accounts, and now everything's in an okay state. So if I go into my Amazon account, I'll see here that now I have this ops read-only role that's then assigned across with that read-only access associated. Guardrails is good for this deployment across a multi-cloud environment, and you can define all different types of variants. You could set exceptions to the policies at different layers of your organizational structure. So you get very nuanced and you get very much more complex with the source that you want to deploy. But one of the other key capabilities is around automated drift detection and correction. And so Guardrails is actually managing the state of this deployment behind the scenes, and it will react to any changes or configuration drift and set that on your behalf, any misconfigurations. Here, if I'm in this account and I was to adjust one of these policies, here, let's just take one of these accounts and then go into here and then edit that trusted policy. So this policy is supposed to be this 502. And if I was to change it to 903, basically mess with the deployment, well, I might be able to do so because I'm logged in here as some super user and I have rights to edit IAM. But what Guardrail is going to do is going to detect that change, and then it's going to react and correct it. Going back into Guardrails, and I'm in my demo account here, we can actually tail that activity behind the scenes. Here, I can see that Bob, coming in as super user, I came in and I changed that external trust from 502 to the 930 account. And what happened is that Guardrails detected that, it then captured that update, and now it's going to run the enforcement to fix the misconfiguration. And actually, that change had occurred. So here, Guardrails already took care of that action and then flipped it back to the 502. And so if I come here, I see that 93 number. If I was to refresh, now it's at the 502 and back to the desired state. And now all of my controls are still showing in an okay state. This is just a quick example of how to deploy one of many concepts within a landing zone pattern, as well as your ability to detect and correct those misconfigurations in real time. If you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us at turbot.com/start.